What if I told you that under the new Trump immigration policy, having no criminal record might not protect you from deportation? Stick with us, because what's really happening behind the headlines might surprise you. Trump's immigration pivot, policy or politics? President Donald Trump's latest approach to immigration enforcement has triggered heated debate across the nation. Reports are emerging that undocumented immigrants without any criminal record may no longer be the primary target for deportation, suggesting a subtle yet impactful shift in enforcement strategy. On paper, the focus is being framed as a more measured approach. But in practice, it's stirring both confusion and concern. The Trump administration, now deep into its second term as of mid-2025, has made immigration a cornerstone of its renewed political agenda. Executive orders signed earlier this year focused on ramping up enforcement against individuals with criminal records. However, recent social media posts and interviews are hinting at a wider net being cast. Are non-criminal immigrants actually safe? According to multiple reports, including internal ICE memos and DHS statements, the priority is clear: remove individuals with violent offenses, drug charges, or known gang affiliations. But while that's the official stance, the numbers tell a different story. In cities like Houston, Los Angeles, and Chicago, a significant portion of recent ICE arrests involved immigrants with no criminal background. A June 2025 internal review published by the Center for Immigration Policy revealed that more than 57% of those detained in the second quarter of the year had no prior convictions. So why is this happening? Immigration attorneys suggest that ICE field offices are facing pressure to meet national quotas. Others argue this approach is a method of psychological deterrence, making undocumented populations feel perpetually unsafe, even when they follow the law. No signed executive order. What's really binding? It's important to understand that no official executive order currently guarantees protection for undocumented immigrants with clean records. While DHS officials continue to insist that violent offenders remain the top priority, enforcement practices remain inconsistent across different jurisdictions. Statements from Tricia McLachlan, a top DHS official, confirmed in a July 2025 ABC interview that ICE will exercise discretion, but stopped short of confirming any national protection for non-criminal immigrants. In practice, this leaves enforcement up to local field offices, many of which are taking a more aggressive stance. Real stories, real consequences. Consider this: Carlos, a Texas high school student with no criminal background, was detained during a March 2025 ICE sweep in San Antonio. His case, featured by NPR, stirred national attention. His only offense? Overstaying a tourist visa as a minor. These individual stories, though often overlooked in policy summaries, reveal how unpredictable immigration enforcement has become. And it's not an isolated case. Legal aid organizations across the country report an uptick in families being separated and students being detained despite having no prior offenses. For every major policy headline, there are thousands of human stories unfolding in silence. The economic tensions behind enforcement. The economic implications of mass deportations cannot be ignored. Sectors like construction, agriculture, childcare, and food service depend heavily on undocumented labor. An aggressive deportation policy threatens to disrupt these industries at their core. In June 2025, the New York Times reported that Trump temporarily halted ICE raids at major farming sites after industry leaders warned of significant labor shortages. With nearly 1 million undocumented workers in agriculture alone, any major enforcement action could destabilize food supply chains and spike grocery prices nationwide. At the same time, the administration faces pressure from voter bases demanding visible action. Striking the balance between political optics and economic reality remains one of Trump's toughest challenges this term. Legal uncertainty and civil liberties. From a legal standpoint, the absence of a codified policy leads to murky ground. Civil rights organizations, including the ACLU and NLC, have already filed lawsuits challenging the deportation of immigrants with no criminal records under generalized enforcement raids. In one recent case, Venezuelan immigrants with temporary protected status were reportedly targeted for deportation despite having valid work permits. Their removal was justified using dated provisions under the Alien Enemies Act, a controversial legal mechanism rarely enforced in modern contexts. Without clearer legal frameworks, advocacy groups argue that the system may erode constitutional protections for due process, especially among vulnerable immigrants with little legal support or representation. Public sentiment and political division. Public opinion on the issue remains sharply divided. A July 2025 NPR/PBS News poll revealed that while over 80% of Republican voters support broader enforcement efforts, fewer than 20% of Democrats agree. This polarization is fueling protests in sanctuary cities and triggering political tension across state lines. State governors in California, New York, and Illinois have pushed back against what they describe as blanket enforcement policies. Meanwhile, southern states like Texas and Arizona are cooperating fully with federal agencies, citing national security concerns. Behind the curtain, our take on the policy shift. From an analytical standpoint, the Trump administration's evolving immigration posture appears both strategic and reactionary. On one hand, it appeases a politically motivated base that demands strong borders and enforcement. On the other, it attempts to soften its image internationally and within industries that rely on immigrant labor. But this balancing act is proving fragile. Without a clearly defined federal standard, immigration enforcement risks becoming a patchwork system, uneven, inconsistent, and vulnerable to abuse. What's needed is transparency. Without it, millions of undocumented immigrants remain trapped in uncertainty, unsure if tomorrow might bring a knock at their door. Looking ahead, what to expect next? The Trump administration has made bold promises, up to 1 million deportations annually by 2026. But as of mid-2025, only around 250,000 have occurred, per NBC News. That shortfall is due to court backlogs, international resistance, and logistical hurdles. Some nations, like Colombia and El Salvador, have begun refusing to accept U.S. deportation flights without diplomatic agreements, further slowing down enforcement efforts. Meanwhile, immigration courts remain overwhelmed, with over 2 million cases pending. Moving forward, analysts predict more executive actions may be signed, particularly if deportation targets are not met. Whether these actions will reinforce civil liberties or further erode them remains uncertain. Conclusion. The current U.S. immigration climate is defined by ambiguity, fear, and unpredictability. While President Trump's policy suggests prioritizing criminals, the data shows broader enforcement is already underway. For undocumented immigrants without criminal records, the dream of staying under the radar is rapidly vanishing. The bigger question now is not just what the government is doing, but what it plans to do next. In the meantime, staying informed, legally prepared, and connected to reliable news sources is essential. Thank you for watching. If you found value in this video, be sure to subscribe to Visa Intel USA, like this video, and share it with someone who needs this information today. See you in the next update.